Hello, everyone. We're back with another episode of Ask Reddit. For those of you who are new here, I'll be highlighting some of the most popular questions and responses from the Ask Reddit subreddit. If you like what you see, please consider subscribing. It makes a big difference for the channel. Now, let's get started with our first question. What common product has a feature you're not sure everyone is aware of? Mobile phones have a low-powered speaker just above the screen, so you can put the phone to your head and other people can't hear your call. Netflix has a fitness or exercise genre where you can watch and work out alongside videos. A lot of people think that Febreze just covers up odors with perfume. It's actually an excellent odor remover, and there's an unscented version that works extremely well and leaves no smell behind. It's just that when they first brought it to market, a lot of people didn't like it because they associate smelling clean with perfumed products. They found that adding a perfume to it increased their sales. It's hard to find in stores, but you can still order the unscented version on Amazon. Barilla Pasta has a Spotify playlist. Each specific song has a duration to match the relevant pasta's cook time. Lifetime warranties on consumer goods, like Columbia jackets and JanSport backpacks. If your zipper fails or the material separates or is no longer repelling water, file a claim online and pay for shipping to the factories. They will either repair it or ship you a comparable new version. Companies like this use your returns to identify weak points in their products while retaining lifetime customers. Toasters have crumb trays in the bottom that you can and should remove and clean. I recently found out that if I press and hold my car key to unlock the car, all the windows open automatically. Not so impressive, but some people might try it out. LOL. The little pincushion pepper is filled with emery powder to help clean and sharpen your pins and needles. On the left side of a car's steering wheel is a stick. Pushing the stick up or down will indicate to other drivers which direction you intend to turn. You're welcome. This is really interesting. I had no idea about some of these features. Like, who knew that mobile phones have a low-powered speaker just above the screen to keep your calls private? And Barilla Pasta having a Spotify playlist that matches the relevant pasta's cook time is just genius. It's like they thought of everything. I'm definitely going to check that out next time I'm cooking pasta. Oh, and you know what else I found out recently? That toasters have crumb trays in the bottom that you can and should remove and clean. I mean, who knew that was a thing? It's probably why my toast always comes out a little burnt. Have you ever come across any hidden features like these in common products? It's kind of cool discovering these little things that make our everyday items even more useful. Let me know in the comments down below, and let's move right into our next Reddit post. What is the clearest case of living in denial you've seen? My brother is married for the 4th time. My mother blames all his ex-wives. I keep pointing out that her son is the common link to all the divorces. A nurse who thought the lump in her breast was nothing important, and the open sore appearing was also nothing important, and once it started draining, thought it was nothing important, despite dressing it daily, was confronted by coworkers after the smell became so rank it lingered where she went. She was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer with metastases to the bones and brain, and died soon after. She was the manager of the oncology unit. Editing to add, because I must not have been clear, and a lot of people see this as an autonomous choice. This was a case of living in denial. Once confronted about her odor, she admitted to the sore, but still thought it was nothing. Agreed to go to the ED with colleague friend, but only to reassure them. An oncologist was consulted in the ED, and she lost it when cancer was mentioned. She insisted on everything being done to treat it, despite no hope. She died within the month, and never left the hospital from the time she was confronted about the odor. A friend diagnosed with diabetes 10 years ago has a needle phobia and is afraid of pricking his fingers to monitor his blood sugar, so he doesn't. Instead, he just eats healthy. Due to blood sugar fluctuations, he gradually goes blind and his kidney fails. He spends 3.5 years on dialysis and then finally gets a kidney transplant. Now, back home with a new kidney, He is still afraid of pricking his fingers and decides he will manage his diabetes by eating healthy, just like he did for the past 10 years. That'd be my father. My mother was manic depressive, as it was called back then. She had several major breakdowns during my childhood. Every time, he'd act like nothing was wrong. She'd be screaming and throwing things, and he'd just try to placate her. It never worked. A couple of times I pointed out that she needed to be committed. He always responded that a person couldn't be committed unless they're a danger to themselves or others. True, but she obviously was. I was terrified of her. Even apart from the breakdowns, she threw rage attacks at the drop of a hat. Long story short, in my 20s, I found out that A, they'd had 2 kids before me, and B, she drowned them in a bathtub during a psychotic episode. What I never found out was how she got released or why she was able to conceive me less than a year later. A friend was with me when I found out about B. He told me later that he'd always thought I was exaggerating when I said I'd feared for my life as a kid. I couldn't blame him. It does sound outlandish. After that, it was even more baffling that my father thought we were safe living with her. I know a guy who tested positive for HIV about 11 years ago. He pretended it didn't happen and did nothing about it. Today, he is dying of AIDS. He's not even 40. So sad. My sister wears flannel shirts and has really short hair, drives a Subaru, wears a battle axe necklace, and has a pile of Sports Illustrated swimsuit editions and a lesbian pride flag in her room. And my mom still hasn't figured out she's gay. My mother, now deceased, refused to wear glasses because she hated how they looked on her. Instead, she insisted her eyesight was not that bad, and the fact that we had to read menus to her at restaurants was just a cute quirk. Buddy keeps complaining that normal guys won't respond to him on dating apps and keeps getting hit on by creepy old dudes. You're nearly 60, and those are age-appropriate matches. Ex's mom moved to Vegas from Europe. She went broke gambling over 10 or so years, practically homeless. Then she got injured on a casino escalator and was compensated more than fairly with a life-changing amount of money. Guess who went broke again? Pretty much exclusively at the same casino? Me, thinking I'll get in better shape and lose some weight while doing literally nothing to make it happen. This is really sad and shocking. The stories of people living in denial about their health and the consequences it has on their lives are really eye-opening. It's unbelievable that people can ignore such serious issues and not take the necessary steps to address them. It's heartbreaking to hear about the nurse who was in denial about the lump in her breast and the friend who neglected to manage their diabetes, leading to such devastating outcomes. These stories really highlight the importance of taking our health seriously and not denying the reality of our medical conditions. Have you ever witnessed someone living in denial about a serious issue? How did their denial impact their life and the lives of those around them? Let me know in the comments down below, and let's move right into our next Reddit post. What item is now so expensive, the price surprises you every time you buy it? Potato chips, I've lost 10 pounds. My doctor says that information is the best thing that could have happened to me. No joke. Concert tickets. I don't buy them anymore, but when I go to buy them, I don't. Old Subway commercial was $5 footlong. $15 footlong doesn't quite have the same jingle to it. As a truck driver, I no longer eat any meal out of a truck stop restaurant anymore. A T-bone steak dinner at the Petro costs almost $40 out the door after taxes and a tip. I was able to justify investing in a vacuum sealer, a Dometic 12-volt fridge freezer, and a gas 1 camping stove. All in all, my total initial cost to start saving more money has been almost $1 to prep my own food, and I'm going to make all of it back after 3 or 4 months if I just cut the restaurants out of my budget entirely. I've also found that brewing your own tea or coffee and using drink mixes cuts back on costs significantly, seeing as a bottle of Gatorade costs like $3.45. Getting something framed. It's always way more expensive than I remember. I'm old enough to remember when ramen was 10 for $1. I usually don't brag about owning expensive things, but I just left the grocery store. This collection of comments is both amusing and surprising, as the individuals express their shock and dismay over the rising prices of everyday items. One person mentions how the cost of potato chips has led to a healthier lifestyle, while another laments the expense of getting something framed. Yet, the truck driver's account of spending nearly $40 on a T-bone steak dinner at a truck stop restaurant really takes the cake. To combat these rising prices, the driver has invested in a variety of tools to prep his own food, hoping to save money in the long run. The rising cost of living is a topic that affects many people, and it's intriguing to hear these personal stories about how individuals are adapting to these changes. What items have you noticed have become significantly more expensive in recent years? And how have you adjusted your spending habits as a result? Let me know in the comments down below, and let's move right into our next Reddit post. How will you react if Donald Trump becomes president again? Sigh, as local newspapers, not American, will once again feature daily updates of what he said or what he did. Here we go again with 4 years of every single comedian, news outlet, reel, post, and anything else just talking about him every day. Take my car to work. Just another Wednesday. Project 2025 scares the hell out of me. I'm Canadian, but I am a little shocked about how his nomination numbers dominated the other candidates. There must be something that people see in him to trust him with the presidency. As an outsider, I'm baffled. And honestly, I just don't get it. Get off social media and never turn on the news. I can't answer that without getting a Reddit Cares notification. Welp. Then stands up. Comment. This is a mix of surprise, dread, and resignation at the thought of Donald Trump becoming president again. Wow, can you believe the possibility of Donald Trump becoming president again? It's like we're in for another round of nonstop coverage, jokes, and debates. I mean, what could Project 2025 possibly bring with him at the helm? And it's not just Americans who are reacting. Even Canadians are shocked and baffled by the support he's getting. Can you imagine having to disconnect from social media and the news just to avoid it all? But hey, maybe some people are just taking it in their stride, like that Midwesterner who just sums it up with a simple whelp and a knee slap. So how do you think you would react if this actually happens? Are you prepared for all the chaos it might bring? Let me know in the comments down below, and let's move right into our next Reddit post. What's a common rule that you break regularly because you fundamentally disagree with it? Jaywalking. If the street is obviously clear, I'm not going to wait for anything. Rules about pirating content that I am geographically restricted from streaming legally. Hell yeah, I'd download a car. Rule against pirating arcade games that can't be found. YouTube TOS says I can't block ads. The day they can stop me is the day I stop watching YouTube. Edit, 8,000 upvotes, and yet there's a lot of complaining in this thread over me still blocking ads. Getting scientific papers from Sci-Hub. It's a total scam that publishers charge for what our government tax dollars pay for. The public should have all of those papers for free. We paid for them. On top of that, it is perfectly legal for authors to send you a copy by email or even snail mail if you ask them for it. If publishers really can't make money without charging for reprints, then they need to find a new business model or go out of business, and the papers should all just get put up on a government-run website for free. I don't give a lab rat's ass if Nature or Science are the premier publications, and therefore claim to have to charge for reprints to justify their existence. It's total bullshit. And I get it that tenure relies on having a mechanism for recognizing the most important papers, but that should not come at the expense of the taxpayer. When the sensor at a traffic light doesn't pick up my car while I'm waiting for a left turn and the light rotation skips over me, it happens all the time at one set of lights I go through to get home, especially late at night. I'd say it misses me 25% of the time. I once sat at the light for over 10 minutes to record it skipping over me multiple times. Middle of the night, not a single other car on the road. It happens so often that I usually just run the red arrow if nobody is around. It's a wide open area around the intersection, so I can see a few hundred yards in all directions. I know it's breaking the law, but common sense and personal responsibility should make doing this a lot more acceptable. I shouldn't be held hostage by a malfunctioning traffic light late at night when nobody else is on the road. Do not discuss salary with colleagues or people outside this company. Forget that. Edit. Phew. To be clear, I am not part of the US and not really part of the EU. The act of discussing pay is not legally protected here. It may be in the future, though. If I find cash on the ground, I'm not going to give it to the authorities. Account sharing. I bought the game, service, movie, etc., so I get to decide who uses it. This is an interesting and rebellious post, with people talking about all the common rules they break because they fundamentally disagree with them. From jaywalking to pirating content, to running a red light when the sensor doesn't pick up their car, to discussing salary with colleagues, to finding cash on the ground and not turning it in. It's a whole spectrum of rule breaking. I can totally relate to the frustration of getting a red light that won't change, especially in the middle of the night when no one else is around. It's like the system is designed for a different kind of traffic. And the piracy and sharing game accounts is something a lot of people are doing nowadays. Have you ever been in a situation where you've had to break a rule because you fundamentally disagreed with it? What was it and what did you do? Let me know in the comments down below. And let's move right into our next Reddit post. What product is a massive scam that everyone buys into? Companies that sell stars or name stars. No one owns stars. You can't own a star, and there is no governing body that authorizes the naming and ownership of stars. You, my friend, have just purchased a piece of paper for $200. Edit. After a challenge from a few people on this, here is the clarification after some Googling. The only body that can give names to astronomical objects is the International Astronomical Union, IAU. This hasn't stopped commercial firms from offering individuals the opportunity to sponsor stars, etc. These names will be recognized by no one, and you will be wasting your money, unfortunately. Those e-commerce guys that sell their guru courses on how to make 10K plus a month. Credit monitoring. They set up a system where false information can ruin your life and then charge you to know when it happens so you can get on top of it before the damage is done. And on top of that, when they leak the personal information of hundreds of millions of people, because their security sucks, their punishment is to give you their service for a short period of time for free, despite the fact that your information being out there means you'll need to pay for it after that free period ends. It's a modern-day, digital version of the mobs. It would be a shame if your house burned down. Let us help protect it, extortion racket. They've convinced the world that our identities are being stolen rather than what it really is. Financial institutions are being defrauded, and they've shifted the burden for their problem onto us. Herbalife. They must have done something special to manage to sell it to a lot of people. Donut holes. The bakery steals the middle of your pastry and then sells it back to you. Those bracelets with a sticker on them that claim to align your magnetic field or whatever. Sudafed regular. You absolutely should be going to the RX counter and getting the non-prescription but controlled version. This is really interesting and eye-opening. It's crazy to think about how many products are out there that people buy into without realizing it's a total scam. I mean, I had no idea about the whole star naming thing. It's mind-blowing to think that people are paying so much money for essentially nothing. And credit monitoring? It's infuriating how they create a problem and then charge people to solve it. It's like a modern-day extortion racket, as the post says. But then there's also Herbalife, which has managed to sell its products to so many people despite the controversy surrounding it. It's like a whole world of scams that we're just buying into without questioning. And donut holes. Who knew that could be a scam too? It really makes you think about what we're being tricked into buying. So, have you ever fallen for one of these scams, or do you know someone who has? Let me know in the comments down below, and let's move right into our next Reddit post. What precautionary measure did you take, thinking just to be safe, that unexpectedly ended up saving the day later on? I run a reptile and exotic animal rescue in South Texas. We are having very cold weather. I drove out to the rescue to check on everyone one more time, even though I'd been out there many times today. The heat had stopped working. We ended up having to move all the reptiles to my house. They would have died tonight. It's crowded as heck, but everyone is alive. The 90-pound tortoise in my living room is probably going to mess some stuff up, but he's alive. Edit typos. Edit 2 for photos of critters and rescue. Reminder that these are temporary emergency enclosures, and as a rescue, some animals are sick and/or injured. I work from home. I take screenshots of what my managers say in Teams. One manager said one thing, another tried to say it never happened. I produced the screenshot. TLDR, my paranoia about a strange guy in a car kept my house from flooding. We had a house fire in October 2021, and we were bouncing back and forth between our house and a rental. Christmas Eve was extra cold and our pipes were frozen in our house, 1894, no insulation yet. So we decided to go to the rental for Christmas Eve. My wife and daughter were taking one car and I was taking the other. When I left the house, I saw a man sitting in his car across the street messing on his phone. Given the cold weather, it seemed odd. When my wife left, the man pulled his car across the street to the spot she just left. This is a one-way street. Since I'm further back, I watch for a bit, but he doesn't do anything, just gets back on his phone. Eventually, my wife calls and asks where I am because she didn't bring her keys for the rental. I drove over and let her in and tell her about the guy. She encourages me to go back and point one of our security cameras his direction just in case. When I get back, he's still there, so I go inside. Once I'm inside, I hear water running. In the 30 minutes I was gone, the water started running again. In the back kitchen, where the fire had been, the faucet was still on and was flooding the room. I shut that off and went downstairs to check the cellar under the kitchen for water leakage. In the cellar was a cracked copper pipe spraying water across the room. So I shut off the water and cleaned up the kitchen before the damage could cause permanent problems. When I left, the guy's car was still there, but he was gone. I think he was meeting a neighbor for Christmas Eve dinner, but if he hadn't been there, the house would have been flooding for who knows how long. I got life insurance on my husband during open enrollment and we joked, "Ha, I'll be a rich widow, ha ha." Totally joking because we have never had any policies on either of us. He got sick and passed away 2 months later. The money saved my butt, and I tell everyone to get life insurance. It's so very important. I was once asked if I could give someone a ride home from a local convenience store. Normally, I would say no, but I decided to be nice that day. They were a lady in her mid-30s or early 40s, so I figured it wasn't that big a deal. For whatever reason, I subconsciously mentioned that I wasn't able to buy what I went into the store for because I forgot my wallet at home. The person said, "You don't have your wallet on you?" I said, "Nah." They looked a little concerned, and a few moments later said they could walk to their destination just fine. I thought it was weird, but didn't think too hard about it. The next day, it was on the news that an armed robbery took place in the exact location she asked me to take her to. And they gave a description that 100% matched the person I was going to take home. I didn't really save myself as I had nothing to steal, but it's an interesting story. Not stopping. About 20 years ago, I almost stopped to help a stranded motorist, but I saw a highway patrol car behind me and knew he would stop. That night on the news, I saw that he did stop and a shootout ensued after the officer noticed the ignition wire had been pulled from the distributor. The stranded motorist was an escaped prisoner looking for another car to steal. As a manager, I noticed my team was getting saddled with harder work than the other teams. I informed my boss, but she laughed at me and sent me packing. Since we tracked employee productivity by cases worked, I had a feeling I'd need some kind of proof in the future. So I went back to my team, explained the situation, and informed them I wanted them to keep daily logs of all their cases and timestamp them, even though the system did this automatically. Fast forward 2 years. Another manager believes his employees are getting harder cases than the other teams, so he complains about it to his boss. His rapport with her is significant as he works the same shift, so she looks into it. After a 3-day secret investigation, I get one of the most aggressive and hateful emails of my career, accusing me of cherry-picking millions of cases over years of work for my team. My response was to hand her daily logs from every employee for 2 years. 11,000 sheets of paper, give or take. The absolutely incredulous look she gave me was worth it alone. What's this? That's 100% accurate daily logs of every employee and their cases worked. Why do you have this? To protect them from you when you inevitably did this. Insert offended look here. This is ridiculous. There's no need for them to be wasting time keeping these logs. There wasn't until today. Feel free to check them. Oh, I will. 3 days later, I got my apology. Turns out an employee was coming in early and scanning in my employee's paperwork and tossing their cover sheets, so there was no record they had done any of the difficult work. After running numbers, it was determined that the other manager was incorrect, and the evidence showed my team worked roughly 34% of difficult cases and accounted for 15% of the total workforce. The day shift employees all got into trouble for passing off hard cases. The day I got to tell my team their logs literally saved all of our jobs was one of my best days at work, ever. Randomly, I went with my friend to buy her a new car, just needed to get out of the house. I convinced her to buy gap insurance because it was cheap, and I wish I had gotten it for peace of mind. Her car got stolen, and instead of being stuck with the loan, the insurance paid out after 30 days or whatever, and she got another car. Slept with the bedroom door open the other day. We almost never do that, and honestly it was because I wanted to be able to hear for some reason. Smelled gas at midnight. Turns out my daughter had turned the stove knob just a touch before going to bed, 5 hours earlier. That was a scary one. Eat it. Responding to a few questions I've seen, no idea if folks will ever see them. The stove is a brand new 2023 Frigidaire with front knobs, i.e., just above the oven door as opposed to set back along the backsplash. Why gas? I am pretty big into cooking and really value the control you get from gas. I use lots of cast iron and have actually cracked the top of an electric range, which was cheaper to buy a new one than repair, thanks GE. I do wish I had gone induction, but my other half wasn't into it and she's the boss, huh? On the specific knob action, yes, you have to push and turn to get the gas flowing. My daughter is too, so when she reaches up to grab the knob, I think she does so with inherent fore-aft force, making the action much easier for her. Side note, she's just about figured out the latch on the stair baby gates just from watching us do it, and that has a latch you pull and lift up. So I wouldn't be surprised if she was mimicking what she sees me do 5 times a day. Someone asked about thermocouple. That auto-closes the gas valve with no heat. I guess this stove doesn't have that. There is a faint hiss, but it's a 2-story house, and when I'm downstairs, I almost always have music on, so I didn't hear it. Lastly, thanks all for directing me to gas alarms beyond carbon monoxide alarms. I did Google in the middle of the night that night and found somewhere that natural gas, which this was, has a narrow window of flammability, and that a complete explosion would be somewhat unlikely. Who knows for sure, but I am glad I did not have to test that hypothesis. I suggested to her doctor that she talk to the patient alone and got her to help. This data is quite interesting. It's fascinating to hear about the precautionary measures people took that ended up saving the day later on. It's especially amazing to hear about the reptile rescue story and the way they ended up being saved. And the story about the house fire and the odd behavior of the man across the street is truly unbelievable. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where a precautionary measure you took ended up making a huge difference? Maybe you had a hunch and decided to do something just to be safe, and it turned out to be crucial in the end. Please share your experience. Well, that's another episode of Ask Reddit in the books. I really appreciate all of you who made it this far into the video. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, it would really help the channel out a lot if you gave the video a thumbs up, subscribe, or leave a comment down below. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.